Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to take a really fascinating look at something you probably see a dozen times a day without a second thought: currency symbols. We're transforming these familiar, everyday squiggles into a thrilling exploration of human history, global trade, and economic power. Honestly, by the time we're done here, you are never going to look at a price tag the same way again.
So let's just dive right in with what seems like a pretty obvious question. Do you know the ancient hidden codes hiding inside your wallet right now? Because we interact with these little markers constantly, right? We type them, we scribble them down, they flash at us on digital screens, all without us realizing that they are literally ancient ciphers, carrying deep, deep roots tied to language and global empires.
And that brings us to our first really big reveal. Most of us just naturally assume the iconic US dollar sign is a distinctly American invention, right? Well, actually, its origin story begins with Spain. Yep, the handwritten shorthand for the Spanish peso, which was basically just a P and an S, directly evolved into the modern dollar symbol. These markers didn't just drop out of the sky. They evolved organically over centuries of global trade.
Okay, let's move into our first major theme, rooted in weight and metal.
Let's look at the British pound. This one connects deeply to ancient Rome. You know that elegant cursive L with the strike right through the middle? It actually derives from the word libra. And in Latin, libra translates directly to scales or balances. So even though Great Britain has gone through some absolutely massive economic shifts, hello Brexit, this symbol remains an enduring anchor to a very ancient system of measuring physical wealth.
Here's the truly crazy part. The phrase pound sterling, that wasn't just some clever focus-grouped branding name. It was an exact, literal, physical measurement. Currency experts generally agree on this. When you held an original British pound back in the day, you were meant to be holding the exact value of 1 physical pound of pure silver. The symbol itself was literally a guarantee of that heavy metallic truth.
Now jumping over to the Japanese yen, which was officially adopted back in May of 1871. Much like the British pound, the roots of the yen lie in silver. It was originally designed to weigh exactly 24.26 grams of pure silver, though depending on what you had, it could also be measured out as exactly 1.5 grams of pure gold. It's kind of wild to think about, right? Today's yen coins are just made of super lightweight aluminum, but their whole conceptual foundation was built on heavy, precious metals.
And get this, the word yen actually translates to round object in Japanese. They use this term to describe the circular shape of the coins being used by other countries at the time, which was a pretty notable distinction. But you might be wondering, why does the symbol use a Y with 2 lines through it? Well, in Japanese, the word is actually pronounced N. The Y was likely slapped on there because foreigners had the strong habit of pronouncing N with a Y sound in front of it. So the symbol literally captures the messy, real-world interaction between Japanese commerce and the outside world.
Sweden kept things incredibly simple when they adopted the krona in 1873. The word simply means crown in Swedish, and they just went with a super straightforward KR for the symbol. But originally, the krona was pegged to an exact fraction of pure gold, specifically 1/2480 kilograms. Over the decades, the actual physical coins morphed to include tin and iron, copper, silver, but that original peg, entirely grounded in the heavy physical reality of gold.
Let's transition to our next section, from letters to lines. So how did the US dollar symbol actually happen? Here's the most widely accepted theory of how it organically morphed from everyday handwriting. In 1785, the brand new United States started using its own currency, heavily modeling it after Spain's. Busy merchants would quickly scribble PS as an abbreviation for peso. Over time, when you're writing fast, the loop of the P kind of just falls away, right? And that downward stroke was just drawn straight through the S. Boom, you get the iconic single-line dollar sign we all know today. Literally just the result of centuries of quick handwriting.
Now, I have to mention there is another completely fascinating theory out there. It proposes that the double-stroke version of the dollar sign is just a really clever monogram. Think about it. If you take a capital U, remove the bottom curve so you just have 2 vertical lines, and then place those lines directly on top of a capital S, you get the double-line dollar symbol, standing perfectly for the United States. Both of these theories really drive home the point that symbols are born from the everyday, organic habits of the people using them.
Moving right along to Section 3, pivots in national identity.
The journey of the Swiss franc is a perfect example of this. It made its debut way back in 1798, but for decades, it was a mess. Numerous governing bodies were all manufacturing their own chaotic, competing versions of the currency.
Finally, in 1848, the federal government stepped in, took sole control, and officially established the franc as Switzerland's united currency by 1850. The irony here? France was historically the country most associated with the franc, yet today, the Swiss franc, divided into 100 centimes, is the very last franc still issued anywhere in the world. It outlasted its namesake to become the ultimate symbol of Swiss stability.
Okay, this next one is absolutely one of my favorite pieces of history. When Australia modernized and swapped from the old British pound system over to dollars in 1966, they had a lot of fun brainstorming names. Seriously, they actually considered calling their money the Boomer, the Kanga, and a Roo. Can you imagine? Even better, the Prime Minister at the time, Robert Menzies, he fought tooth and nail to call it the Royal. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how much you love a good joke, he lost that battle, and they just stuck with the Australian dollar. Canada followed a remarkably similar path, using their currency to forge a distinct national identity. They swapped out their pounds for dollars too. Get this, back in 1841, 1 Canadian pound was equal to 4 US dollars. Because several Canadian provinces had completely different currencies just flying around everywhere, the federal government had to step in during 1871 to establish total national unity. And today, just to make sure it stands completely apart on the global stage, you'll often see it denoted as C dollars, locking in that very unique Canadian identity. Which brings us to our final theme today: intentional, modern design.
Unlike the messy, organic, centuries-long evolution of the dollar, the euro was, well, it was relentlessly focus grouped. It's the youngest major currency on our list today, becoming the sole currency for its member states in 2002, with its roots tracing back to the 1991 Maastricht Treaty. This symbol absolutely did not evolve from a merchant's quick pen strokes. Instead, professional designers submitted ideas, mass public polling was conducted, and the ultimate winner was chosen by a formal vote from the European Commission, the whole shebang.
And because of that process, the winning symbol is incredibly heavy with intentional, baked-in meaning. The European Commission explicitly stated it was inspired by the Greek letter epsilon, which mimics in English E, representing that first letter of Europe. And those two parallel lines striking through the center, they aren't just there to look cool. The designers deliberately added them to act as a literal, visual certification of the currency's economic stability. It's a promise written in the symbol itself.
Then we have the Indian rupee, which presents us with this massive, fascinating historical gap. The rupee is actually one of the oldest currencies in the world. We are talking origins tracing all the way back to the 6th century BCE. Yet, incredibly, it did not have an official, unified symbol for almost its entire existence. People just used the shorthand RS or RE. That finally changed in 2010, when the Indian government hosted a massive contest among its citizens to design a true official symbol to represent their booming modern economy.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that this new symbol, very much like the euro, was heavily engineered for a very specific purpose. Notice those parallel lines at the top? They intentionally reference the tricolor of the Indian flag, projecting deep national pride. Even more importantly, it was purposefully designed to be just as easy to write out and understand as the dollar or the euro. The whole goal was to allow it to visually sit right alongside those famous heavyweights in the financial markets, projecting absolute global economic parity. So, what does this all mean for us today? Well, the value of money constantly fluctuates, right? It goes up and down every single day. But these ciphers of commerce, whether they were born from heavy scales of silver, sloppy merchant handwriting, or modern graphic design contests, they are remarkably enduring anchors of our global economy. They tell the story of where we've been as a species and where we're going. So the next time you hand over a dollar, a euro, or a pound, ask yourself, which of these ancient icons do you think will outlast the rest?